us to battle, you need to do your fighting in prayer.
You've been a good enough father.
I don't want to be a good enough father.
Something or someone will have first place in your heart. But when you find your identity in the one who created you, it'll change your whole perspective. What have you allowed to define you? Your identity will be tied to whatever you give your heart to.
This is a song to all my ladies. You're like diamonds and pearls. You mean the world.
Hey St. Stephen family, I'm Ebony Ingram Jones, here to tell you all about March 2020 Women's Month activities. Our first activity on the Louisville campus is going to be our phenomenal consignment shop to be held Saturday, March 7th from the hours of 1 to 4. Please check out the Women's Ministry table for more information. Let's go ahead to Hardin County to see what Sister Tawan has to offer.
We are getting ready to celebrate our Flawless Ladies in just a couple of weeks. As you know, March is our Women's Month. And here at Hardin County, we have a plethora of events that I'm sure you can't wait to hear about. Well, on February 26th, we have our fellowship kickoff at 6 p.m. So stay tuned and be sure to watch for details in your church announcements.
Thank you so much, Tawan. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sister Camille on our Southern Indiana campus.
Thank you, Ebony. My name is Camille Stewart, and we are so happy to be collaborating with the Louisville campus for the month of March for the Women's Ministry. And also, if you don't feel like cooking on a Sunday in the month of March, we will be selling some good old soul food dinners. Last year, we sold out in 15 minutes, so you don't want to miss this good treat. So again, for the whole month of March, we'll be selling those soul food dinners.
Well, Camille, you can definitely count on me to participate in those festivities.
All right.
St. Stephen, I want to encourage everybody to stay connected using our social media platforms, and I want to make sure that everyone remembers our $150 contribution above our tithes and offerings. Until next time, stay flawless by faith.
You're like diamonds and pearls. You mean the world. Oh, you're special. You're a queen. You're a special girl. He made you in his image, so beautiful.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo!
Guess what day it is? Well, needless to say, Wanda Williams Ferguson and Tanya Slaughter and B. Robertson, they know what day it is, and I'm happy that these three women joined us already and saluted, said hello, because guess what? We are getting ready to start our Women's Month series. As you well know, March is Women's Month, and during the month of March, the women at St. Stephen's celebrate the whole month long, and we have Women's Day and all that. So in salute to women, we will be doing a series on women, of some of the women of the Bible, and our series is Flawless. Now, I know the overall theme is flawless, but we are saying flawless by faith. We still have flaws. We all have flaws. We're not perfect, but and when we say flawless, it meaning we don't have any flaws, but I'm saying flawless because we still have flaws, but our flaws are not quite as big or quite as noticeable when our faith kicks in. And so we are going to see over this month of studies how women have, even though they have some flaws, they still, by faith, they fight for their home, they fight for their children, they fight for a happy marriage. You know, sisters, we just have to do some fighting sometimes. And so our first lesson we're going to look at is when faith meets folly. Faith meets folly. And there is no doubt about it that our faith is going to encounter some folly. In fact, old school song says, I bid this world and its folly adieu. I've started in Jesus and I'm going through. And so we are going to first look at a person we probably heard of, but we really haven't given her too much attention, and that is Abigail. So let's look at starting at 1 Samuel chapter 25, and we start at verse 1. Now Samuel died. You know, Samuel was the prophet. Samuel was the priest. And let me stop right here and say, prophet and priest have two different responsibilities. It's not often that the prophet is the priest or the priest is a prophet. Now, just in case you ever playing Bible trivia, let me tell you something. The only person who has ever been prophet, priest, and king, because all three offices are separated, was Jesus Christ. He was king, he was a prophet, and he was a priest. But now, before we get into this lesson, let me go back to the prophet and priest business again. The prophet, if anybody ever asks you, what's the difference between a prophet and a priest? The prophet was God's mouthpiece. He went to the people on the behalf of God. That's why he always said, well, thus said the Lord, because he's speaking for God. The priest went to God on the behalf of the people. Whoa! And that's why we are known, not as prophets, but we, all of us, believers of Christ, we are a royal priesthood. So we should be going to God on behalf of the people. Our nation is in a chaotic state. We should be taking it to God on the behalf of the people. Now, let me get on back to the lesson because I can go on and teach that one for a little while. Now, Samuel died, and all Israel gathered for his funeral. They buried him at his house in Ramah. Then David moved down to the wilderness of Maon. Now, let me say this. David had been anointed to be the next king. You got to always go back. You got to go back because you don't want to forget. Saul was disobedient. God was ready to make Saul. Now, Saul is their first king because if you remember, the people went to Samuel and said, we want a king. And Samuel went to God. He's been a priest. And God said, tell them they got a king. So Samuel goes back and said, thus said the Lord, you have a king. You have a king. But the people said, no, we want to have a king like all the other nations around us. So Samuel goes back to God on behalf and said, no, he said, tell them if they got a king, this is what the king will do. He will have to be taken care of. He will put more taxes on them. He gave them every reason why they did not need a king. But you know, God can tell us. And there are times we want to walk in our own willful way. Now, so He goes back, and the people said, we want a king. God said, let him have a king. You remember, in fact, the other week, I'm telling you, if you missed it, you need to stop by St. Stephen and see if you can pick it up. Because the pastor preached a sermon one Wednesday night, a couple of weeks ago, making sense of God's will. And in that, he was saying God has a perfect will. God has a permissive will, and God has a prevailing will. And God's perfect will was that he would be king of Israel. But they didn't want it. So now God's permissive will comes in, and he says to Samuel, okay, tell the people they can have a king. And he told Samuel whom to anoint. That was Saul. He had a kingly, you know what we think about kings, tall, dark, handsome, and all that kind of stuff. But he was disobedient. So God sent Samuel to anoint David. And when Saul heard about it, and especially after David killed Goliath, he was Saul's number one enemy. He was number one on the hit list. And so David has been running from Saul for several years, quite a few years now. He is going to be the next king, but notice he did not try to overthrow Saul. He's waiting for his time. And my sisters and brothers, we need that in itself as a lesson. When God has appointed us to do something, be patient in your time. No, scratch that. In his time. He'll make it come to fruition. You don't have to go up there big, bad, and tell somebody, well, see, I'm going to be the next. God will do it in his time. And guess what? God is time. All right? So, let's go back. There was a wealthy man from Manon who owned property near the town of Carmel. He had 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats, and it was sheep shearing time. This man's name was Nabal, and his wife Abigail was a sensible and beautiful woman. But Nabal, a descendant of Caleb, was cruel and mean in all his dealings. Whoa. Now, when David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep, he sent 10 of his young men to Carmel with this message for Nabal: peace and prosperity to you. And he's coming in peace. Your family and everything you own. I am told that it is sheep shearing time. While your shepherds stayed among us near Carmel, we never harmed them, and nothing was ever stolen from them. Ask your own men. Ask them, and they will tell you this is true. So would you be kind to us, since we have come at a time of celebration? Please share any provisions you might have on hand with us and your friend David. David's young men gave this message to Nabal in David's name, and they waited for a reply. Now let's look, point number one. Let's look at the request of David. Now, let me say this. David's request was appropriate. He wasn't doing something that was underhand and not supposed to do. It was appropriate according to the law, according to tradition, and according to what was reasonable to expect. Reasonable to expect in return for his protection. So don't think that David was doing something outside of the law, or he was trying to blackmail the man. So David had been a wall of protection around them. They could have, no one came to bother them because David and his men surrounded them. So his presence had saved them from thieves. The mere fact that David and his men were there, their presence saved them. And he had saved them by what? Now watch this. His power and his presence. Just the fact that he was there meant, okay, we're going to pass by this. We're just not going to bother that. Now notice, David's Now, I want you to get this. I'm going to say it again because I need for you to get this. David's mere presence had kept trouble from this man's doorsteps. David had been a hedge around them. And notice when he comes, so the reason he came was that he asked him to share with them in a time of celebration. It wasn't inappropriate. The manner, they came in the name of their master, because they said, we come for David, all right? They came with a message, and they came in peace and prosperity. They said peace and prosperity to you, your family, and everything you own. So that's what they did. Oh, now I need you to get this, because I don't know if I put it in this lesson or some other lesson. I think it's this lesson. I'm going to sneak at the end and see. Oh, yeah. We need to understand, in this Bible, in this book, Christ is in every book of the Bible. Every book of, and it's obvious right here to me. If it's not obvious to you, I'm going to show you. Now notice, David's presence kept the thieves, kept people who would do them harm away. Have you ever thought about just Christ's presence have kept trouble from our doorsteps? When you went to sleep last night, you went to bed last night, you locked the door, you put on your alarm system, you thought that alarm system kept you safe. But you need to understand that the mere presence and power of the Lord is what keeps us safe, because we are dead to the world. We don't know what's going on outside. We don't know what's going on inside. All we know is that we woke up and we had a good night's rest, because, our foreparents used to put it this way. They said, Jesus be a fence all around me every day. Jesus protect me as I travel day by day. And see, we don't understand. We have hedges in our yards now because it makes the yard look good. But then in biblical time, a hedge was a protection. You see, they did not have doors like we had. You know, we got screens and we got storm doors, we got screen doors. But when they opened up the door, anybody could walk in. So they had our critters could come on in. So they had a hedge around. So that was protection. And God has been our hedge, like David had been a hedge around this fella. And he come, and they said, we come in the name of our master. And many times the preacher has come in the name, our evangelist or someone has come in the name of Jesus. And how do we take the message? And he comes in peace, because the angels told the shepherds out there when they brought a message, for unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And he will bring peace. And this is what we see happening. Peace to you, peace to your family, peace to everything you own. But many times we respond like Nabal. And what did he say? Let's go back to reading verse 10. He said, who is this fellow David? Nabal sneered to the young man, who does this son of Jesse think he is? Now us, we wouldn't have put Jesse in there. Who does this son of think he is? There are lots of servants these days who run away from their masters. Should I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it to a band of outlaws who come from who knows where? Whoa. Now, You got to get. Let's go back and look at it again, because I don't want you to miss this. Who does this son of Jesse think he is? There are lots of servants. Notice he has regulated David, who is anointed to be the next king of Israel. Who does he? And they see him as a servant. There are lots of servants these days who run away from their masters. Should I take my bread and my water and my meat and that I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it to a band of outlaws? They went from servants to a band of outlaws. Who come from who knows where? Well, but you've already identified that you know him, because you said, who does this son of Jesse think he is? So you know David is the son of Jesse, and if you know Jesse, then you must know where he come from. But yet now you want to say, who know where he come from? So let's look at the rejection of Nabal. He is ill-tempered. And many of us, the first time, go back into your mind. The first time that someone spoke to you about Jesus, you was probably ill-tempered too. And now, the first time that you speak to somebody about him, you come in the name of the master, and they are ill-tempered. Not only was he ill-tempered, he was insulting. He was insulting because, number one, he said, who does this son of Jesse think he is? A lot of servants, band of outlaws. He is insulting. And in fact, he is rejecting the claims of David. Now, hospitality in those days was number one. We don't think too much about it today, but it was number one. And when a stranger come and you had it, and he had 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats, he had it. He just didn't want, because he said, should I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've slaughtered? So he is insulting. He's an ignoramus. Yeah. He's an ignoramus, which means he's a fool. And so if he's a fool, then you expect him to do foolish things. And my boy lives up to his name. He lives up to his name. He's living for self-gratification. Self-gratification. And because we'll jump down in verse 36 of chapter 25, when Abigail arrived home, she found that Nabal was throwing a big party and was celebrating like a king. And he was very drunk. So it was about self-gratification. Fast forward to the New Testament, and Jesus tells a story. Luke chapter 12, verse 16. Then he told them a story. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. Then he said, sound like a neighbor? Then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now, take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But now I tell you, the next word is what you always need to look at. The next two words, but God. Woo! That's a lesson all by itself. In fact, I said we before this year out, we may need to do a series on but God. You got to watch the buts. And then God's coming right behind it, but God said to him, you know what? You fool. You will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? Now, ooh, that's good. That's good. Because Nabal's name means fool. He's a fool. And I wonder if perhaps Jesus is not using the incident that we just looked at and telling it over here, because see, Jesus was there. He knows all. He sees all. He's got it all. So he uses this and tells it then. And God said, you're a fool. You are a fool. You will die, not tomorrow, but this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? Well, stick a pin in that, because we're going to answer that question when it comes to our lesson. Because, okay, I don't want to jump. If some of you probably already know the lesson, and some of you may not know of the incident. So he was ill-tempered. He was insulting. He's an ignoramus. He's insolent. He's rude. He lacks respect. And in fact, now, I read to you back up there in verse 3 that he was a descendant of Caleb. But when the land was being divvied out, it was said that Caleb went out for the tribe of Judah. Back in Deuteronomy, Numbers, the Caleb was of the tribe of Judah. Now, if this is so, if Nabal is of the tribe of Judah and Caleb was from the tribe of Judah, then you know what that means? Because David is from the tribe of Judah. That means that's his cousin. Whoop, whoop. So you need to be careful. We don't want to treat our kin folks right. That's your cousin. Y'all don't want to hear this, but that man in the White House, that's your cousin. You don't want to hear it. I know y'all don't want to hear it. That's your cousin. Yeah, we got, we got some folks in our family who are like Snicker bars. They full of nuts. Some of our families are full of nuts. And so, guess what? You got a nut in the White House, but he ain't your family. He your cousin. You need to be praying for him. Stop talking about it. Pray for him. Okay, let me go on back to the lesson. I know y'all said, okay, get back to the lesson. Sound like somebody calling me now and telling me to shut up about that. So let's get back. But he was insolent. He was rude. He lacked respect. Now, let's go back to reading. So David's young men returned and told him what Nabal had said. Get your swords, was David's reply, as he strapped on his own. Oh, you got to love I tell you, I love the Old Testament because they give you the stories and you see everything. It's just kind of like watching the movies. David said, oh, is that what he said? Get your sword. And he strapped his on. Then 400 men, 400 men, 400, I didn't say 400 men started out with David to go get this fool. And 200 remained behind to guard their equipment. So we looked at the request of David, the rejection of Nabal. Now let's look at the reaction of David. David was outraged. He was thinking, what? I don't believe this. I don't believe this. He was outraged and he was outdone. He thought, all this time I have provided, I have secured, put security around him. I've kept him from hurt, harm, and danger. And the first time that I said, let me have a little bit of a lamb chop over there. This is his reaction. Now, stop and think about this. Isn't it a good thing that God doesn't react to our foolishness like David reacted? I mean, because we've done some foolish things, there's no doubt. Wait a minute. Or does he? Does God react to our foolishness as David did? Or does he? Think about that. Maybe God does react to our foolishness sometimes like that. You remember? The children, Moses was up on Mount Sinai getting the law. And the children of Israel was down in the valley acting a fool, making a gold calf, dancing around, having a good old time. And God said to Moses, get down, go and see about your people. And Moses interceded for them because God said, I'm going to destroy them. You remember Moses interceded and said, don't do it. Don't do it. Because if you kill them, and notice God said to Moses, go on down, I'm going to kill them, and I'm going to make a nation from you. And Moses said, don't do it. Don't do it. Because your enemies will say, because you couldn't bring them out of Egypt, you killed them. So he interceded. Woo! Keep on. I tell you, this is good stuff here now. This is good stuff. You remember when they were standing there at the promised land, and God had promised them, said, I got a land for you flowing with milk and honey. And they sent spies, 12 spies to spy out the land. What are you looking for? 12 men go to spy and see if the land was like what God said it would be. Is that what you're looking for? Because they come back and they said, well, yeah, it was just like he said, but he failed to let us know there were some giants in the land. But Joshua and Caleb said, oh, it's everything he said, and true, there are giants in the land, but we can take them. Let's go up and claim the land. But the people wouldn't go. You remember God's reaction? God said, you don't want to go? He said, here what you're going to do. You're going to wander around in the wilderness. And they said, ooh, wait a minute. Let's go. God said, don't go. Because if you go, I'm going to strike you down. See, ain't you glad Jesus came? Who stands in the gap for us? Who intercedes on our behalf? Because I know there have been many times that I have done some foolish things, said some foolish things, act foolish, and God said, look, I can find somebody else to do this. I really don't need her. And he's not lying because he can't lie. He don't need me. He don't need you. But he allows us. He permits us to be a part of his program. Then we get all beside ourselves. He blesses us like he blessed, like David blessed Nabal and kept a hedge around him. And his repay is, I ain't giving you nothing, dude. You must think I'm crazy to take my stuff and give it to you outlaws. And you remember God said you're going to be in the wilderness for 40 years. And then until all of you who are 20 and up of 20, you're going to die in the wilderness. Woo! So maybe he does get a little impatient with us. That's food for thought. We need to think about, what if God reacted the same? Because I know he gets outdone and perhaps outraged with us. But let's go and see what happens next. Let's go back to verse 14. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went to Abigail. That's his wife. Remember, we read that in the earlier up. And told her, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master. But he screamed insults at them. These men have been very good to us, and we never suffered any harm from them. Nothing was stolen from us the whole time they were with us. In other words, they are verifying what David's men said. They had been a protection around them. They had kept them from hurt, harm, and danger. They never took anything from them. In fact, day and night, they were a wall of protection to us and the sheep. You need to know this and figure out what to do, for there is going to be trouble for our master and his whole family. That means you, Abigail. He's so ill-tempered that no one can even talk to him. Now watch what this woman does. I told you this was Women's Month. So now look at this woman. Abigail wasted no time. She didn't say, what? No, well, let me talk to him. She wasted no time. She quickly gathered 200 loaves of bread, 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 sheep that had been slaughtered, nearly a bushel of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. She packed them on donkeys and said to her servants, go on ahead. I will follow you shortly. Don't you see what Jesus is doing here, what we're talking about here? He sent the prophets to us. Go on ahead. I will follow you shortly. I will bring salvation with me. Oh, God Almighty, I wish you all could see this. But she didn't tell her husband Nabal what she was doing. As she was riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, she saw David and his men coming toward her. David had just been saying a lot of good it did to help this sorry fella. We protected his flocks in the wilderness, and nothing he owned was lost or stolen. But, got to watch the buts, he has repaid me evil for good. May God strike me and kill me if even one man of his household is still alive tomorrow morning. Woo! So here comes David with vengeance on his mind. Now, when Abigail saw David, here's verse 23, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed low before him. She fell at his feet. She fell at his feet. But watch what she said. And said, I accept all blame in this matter. What? Hey, woman, you haven't done anything, but that's just like us. She said, I accept all blame in this matter, my Lord. Please listen to what I have to say. How many times have we seen mothers and wives and sisters and all pleading because somebody in our family did something stupid? And she said, I accept all the blame. Lay it on me. But please listen to what I have to say. I know Nabal is a wicked and ill-tempered man. Please don't pay any attention to him. He is a fool, just as his name suggests. His name means fool. That's why we named it When Faith Meets Folly, meaning fool. He's a fool. But I never even saw. She said, look, I didn't even see the young men you sent. Now, my Lord, as surely as the Lord, all caps, meaning Jehovah, just as sure as the Lord lives and you yourself live, because see, when she said Lord to David, it was a little L. She just mean, you kind of overseer of this thing. But now, surely as the Lord, all caps, Yahweh, Jehovah, surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, since the Lord has kept you from murdering and taking vengeance into your own hands, let all your enemies and those who tried to harm you be as cursed as Nabal is. And here is a present that I, your servant, have brought to you and your young men. Please forgive me if I have offended you in any way. You see, she's not throwing her husband under the bus. She throws herself under the bus as well. Forgive me if I have offended you in any way. She has done no wrong. The Lord will surely reward you with the everlasting dynasty, for you are fighting the Lord's battles, and you have not done wrong throughout your entire life. Well, you know, she exaggerating there a little bit, but that's all right, because none of us are perfect. Even when you are chased by those who seek to kill you, your life is safe in the care of the Lord your God, secure in his treasure pouch. It's like, look, he's got you in his pouch. He got you in his pocket. He is taking care of you. But the lives of your enemy will disappear like stones shot from a sling. So she knew that David and had heard about him using a stone thrown from a sling to bring down Goliath, and she brings it up. When the Lord has done all he promised and has made you leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. Then your conscience won't have to bear the staggering burden of needless bloodshed and vengeance. And when the Lord has done these great things for you, please remember your servant. Woo! That girl know how to plead, don't she? Now, look at this as a prayer. How many mothers and grandmothers have prayed like this, stood in the gap because their children have done foolish things? Not just their sons, could be the daughters as well, have done foolish things. So they go and they kneel, they lay prostrate before the Lord and beg and plead and intercede for God to have mercy on you. Did you think that you got here on your own? Your mama, okay, an old song just come to me. Somebody prayed for me, had me on their mind, took the time and prayed for me. I'm so glad they did. I'm so glad they did. I'm so glad they prayed for me. I don't know about you, but I had a praying mother, and I know my mother prayed for me because I heard her one time praying for me, and she was upstairs in her bedroom, her secret closet, because the bedroom was her secret closet. I could hear her all over the house saying, Lord, bless my daughter. Now, she up in heaven looking down, and he's doing just what she asked. So David replied to Abigail, praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you to meet me today. Thank God for your good sense. Bless you for keeping me from murder and from carrying out vengeance with my own hands. For I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, who has kept me from hurting you, that if you had not hurried out to meet me, not one of Nabal's men would still be alive tomorrow. So how many times has Christ stood in the gap for us? Then David accepted her present, and told her, return home in peace. I have heard what you said. We will not kill your husband. Well, when Abigail arrived home, she found that Nabal was throwing a big party and was celebrating like a king. He was very drunk, so she didn't tell him anything about her meeting with David until dawn the next day. Because he was drunk. He just said, I ain't care nothing about him. He can't tell me what to do. So in the morning when Nabal was sober, his wife told him what happened. As a result, he had a stroke and lay paralyzed on the bed like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck him and he died. So we talked about, let's see, request of David, rejection of Nabal, reaction of David. Then we see rescue by Abigail. And notice she yielded instantly. She had brains as well as beauty. She was attractive. She was a wise wife. And she believed. When she went out with all these gifts to David, that demonstrated her faith. She believed in David. She pleaded earnestly. She pleaded, notice, for her foolish husband. And his ways was right in his own eyesight. But she pleaded for him. And she testified courageously. She was wise enough to wait until he was sober. And she told him what had happened. Now, the results, Nabal was stricken. Abigail is exalted. How is she exalted? Because when David discovers that this fool died, then he sends men after her and tells her, David wants you to be his wife. Now, I asked a question, and she married David. Remember back up in the parable, for God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? So who got everything that Nabal worked for? Now, wait, don't you dare say it. Don't you dare say Abigail. Abigail got it, but she married David. And when a woman married someone, the man got the property. So you got to be careful. But here's what. You need to go back and look at the story again. That's 1 Samuel chapter 25. Read the whole thing. Can you see, do you see yourself in the story? Have you been a Nabal? Have you been an Abigail? Then you need to decide, are you going to be on the side of faith or you're going to be on the side of folly? Well, that's our lesson. Go back and read it again. And then next week we're going to come and we're going to talk to you about, it's kind of, I think it's taken from, the title's taken from a TV show. I've never seen it. I just know that it is a title. Sister Wives. Woo, we're going to talk about that. That's a good one. See you next week.